Actors, we've all got issues, so let's talk about them. You're listening to Actors with Issues, a self-help podcast for actors, by actors. Hello, ladies, gents, and non-binary friends. Welcome back to another episode of Actors with Issues, the self-help podcast for actors, by actors. Featuring special guests from TV, film, and Broadway, we take a deep dive into the world of entertainment and discuss what it means to be an actor today. I'm your host, Juan Ayala, and today I am joined by an actor who has appeared in Agents of S.W.A.T, Supergirl, Criminal Minds, Quantico, and for the last 8 seasons of the hit CBS series S.W.A.T as Victor Tan. It's David Lim. David, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, and very cool story. 230 episodes. You got us beat.
Before we dive into your career and whatnot, all those shows that we mentioned, I want to go back to your origin story, because you sort of didn't have the typical grew up doing musical theater, got my BFA, and then, moved to New York or LA. So you were born and raised in California. You go on to earn your degree in engineering. You worked as a loan officer for some time. So what was it that led you to switch up your career path to pursue acting?
Well, I can't sing, so it was an easy choice not to do musical theater as a kid, and I was a shy kid, so that was like the double whammy. Um, I did get my degree in engineering. I worked as a loan officer for 3 years after I graduated. Really enjoyed it. Was making good money. Had aspirations of climbing up the corporate ladder and living and working in San Diego the rest of my life. That's where I went to school. And about 3 years in, something shifted. I wasn't feeling challenged at my job. I wanted to do something different. I felt like I was meant to do something different and just greater than what I was doing. And I was ready for a change. And I it was always kind of intrigued by film and TV. Grew up with love watching movies and action and television. But I had no clue of how to become an actor or become a model. But I was interested, and I had a little too much time on my hands at work at the time, and so I would spend my free time on Google, inquiring, how to get into the entertainment industry. And that's kind of how it started. I was always a very hard worker. Even when I became a loan officer, I didn't know anything about the mortgage industry, but I knew that I could learn about it and teach myself and learn on the job. And so that's how I approached when I decided I'm going to kind of dabble or see if I can become an actor. I see it on the screen. It doesn't look too hard. Of course, when you get into it, you learn that it ain't as easy as they make it look. And so I really taught myself from the ground up. I went out and got some headshots. I submitted them to agents. I got into an acting class. I submitted myself for little indie student projects, just to try to get any experience that I could get. And then, as your story with your podcast, one thing leads to another. An agency gets back to me. I move up to Los Angeles, and this was in 2009. And I just told myself, you know what, I'm going to go for this. It wasn't always my dream, as it is a lot of people's, but it became my dream to see if I could find success in this industry. And I said, you know what, I'm going to quit my job, and I'm really going to go for it. So I had a little money saved up from my job. I moved to Los Angeles to pursue acting and modeling. And now we find ourselves in 2025. The time flies. It's been about 15 years since I moved to Los Angeles, and it's definitely been a grind. And you have to have some luck on the way, but a lot of hard work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And here we are, 8 seasons and I think 163 episodes of SWAT later.
I feel like everyone's journeys are so different. I feel like no one has like identical stories and whatnot. And yeah, it's so inspiring to hear that, you just sort of went for it, but carefully though. You weren't sort of like, some folks are reckless, like I'm gonna leave, I'm gonna drop everything and move to Hollywood and see what happens. And those
Yeah.
people sadly crash and burn a lot, because it is a lot to sort of, as you said, the blood, sweat, and tears going into the pursuit and the rejection and the constant auditioning and trying to sort of, submit and forget. And that it's hard, we say
Not
it's
easy.
not
Yeah.
as easy as it sounds. Um, but yeah, and I have to admit, we do have a slight connection. So as mentioned, you were a recurring character on Quantico in season two, and that was actually the first show I ever worked on in New York. I
Oh,
was
no
an
way.
extra for a few episodes,
Oh, cool.
in like the FBI offices and whatnot, and I was such a fan of the show. So then when I had just started getting, I worked on like my first set in Connecticut. It was like a Hallmark Christmas movie. It's where I grew up, and that was like my first time on a set, and a bunch of the extras sort of came in from New York,
Mm,
and they were like, "Oh, you got to go to central casting. You got to do this and that," and that's how I got started, and it happened to be on the show you're on.
amazing.
But
Well,
yeah,
the story. And I've worked with a lot of like background and co-stars who go off
mhm,
and like now they have their own shows and
yeah,
stuff. You're like, wow, what an amazing journey.
yeah. And with Quantico, that was your first sort of major recurring roles. And I'm curious, what do you remember from that experience, sort of entering the second season of this very popular, very beloved show? And what were sort of some big takeaways from that experience?
Yeah, just really excited at my first opportunity to have a major role on network television. I had done some co-stars and some smaller roles on. I started on doing some soap operas,
Mhm.
and so this was my first larger role. So very excited. Found out I got the role 3 days later. I pick up and moved to New York. My girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, came with me. So I had her there with me, which was an incredible experience. I'd always wanted to live in Manhattan. I wanted to be young and single and live in Manhattan at some point in my life. But here I brought my girl, and I was getting to work on a hit show, so it was all pretty new to me. I loved my time there. I loved the people who I got to work with. Me being probably the least experienced of the main cast there. So I was just learning and picking people's brains and watching these guys who have been doing it a lot longer than I have work. And a lot of my scenes were with an actor named Russell Tovey,
Mhm.
really talented, phenomenal British actor. And I learned so much working with him, had a blast. We became buds. And the entire experience was just beautiful. And I really loved my time there and made some great relationships,
Mhm.
and I definitely will always remember that year that I got to spend in New York working on this show.
Yeah, it was so cool to see, this show about at least the first season was like a CIA trainees and you have this young sort of up and coming cast and like you said, folks have gone on to do really awesome things. They're working in theater on doing more film, more television and stuff. Folks like yourself from the show who are now on this other huge hit show that's been running for nearly a decade. And with SWAT, sort of fast forwarding to today, it has such a strong following. The fans basically are the ones that got it uncanceled a couple years ago.
Right. Yeah.
Um, which, I remember being so bummed because I grew up with procedurals and whatnot. So like
Right.
SWAT was such a cool show to watch and the Hawaii Five-O reboot and the Law and Orders that have sort of spanned over the decades and whatnot. So I'm curious, like, what does it feel like to have all of that support from the fans, from this fan base, just seeing that loyalty that folks want the show to continue?
Uh, a lot of emotions, definitely over 8 years of being part of something really special. The relationships that I've made with the other cast members, the outpouring of love and support through really 8 seasons from our fans. And then, of course, we were all very heartbroken when we found out about a month ago now that our show wasn't going to be returning for a ninth season. And we all had wanted to come back for a season 9 and potentially more. We all thought that we put out, a really strong season Up to this point, we still have like 6 episodes left to air. And so we thought we were in a great position to continue on. It felt a bit of like a reboot because we added, 2 or 3 new cast members.
Mm.
So there was this kind of refresh, a re-energized feeling on set and in the writers' room because now they had these new characters to kind of develop and let the audience, take a liking to. Of course, the audience always loves the OGs, but they were just starting to come along to the newer cast members who are super, super talented and lovely. And what started as heartbreak, anytime I'm sure your show gets canceled, very quickly for me and a lot of us turned to gratitude, just for getting to go on this ride of 8 years on, spent with a lot of the same people who, we're family. You spend this much time with
Mm.
people, they become your brothers and your sisters and your family and the people you look forward to seeing every day when you go to work. And so it quickly shifted to gratitude. Not many actors get to have this opportunity to be a part of something for this long of a run. So
Yeah.
very grateful for that. But it still felt like, as it did the last couple seasons, like maybe there's a little magic left. It doesn't feel like this is quite finished. And then, of course, that night, Shamar gets on social media and he's saying, "Thanks, CBS. Hey, Netflix, how you doing? ABC, Fox, NBC. What's cracking?" As he does, he's outspoken. But what I've learned about Shamar, and he and I are very close, is that he fights for what he believes in, and he fights for the people, his family, the show, the other cast members. It's very rarely just about Shamar. So he strongly felt that we deserve to continue, and he made that known, and so there's just
Yeah.
outpouring of love and support from our fans who have shared just what this show has meant to them, and how much they love the show and the characters, and that right there is so rewarding.
Having so many, actually, there's quite a long list. Actually, have it here, but a lot of our past guests on the show, and some of whom are great friends, have been on SWAT. They've worked on. It's been one of their co-stars or guest stars. To name a few, Michael Sasaki, Philip Garcia, Ryan Salazar, Jermaine Arroyo had a great couple episodes with Hicks.
Wow.
Johnny Woo, who I know you worked with directly. He's a dear friend. He's one of our earliest guests on the show, 4 or 5 years ago now. And I'm curious, what do you remember from your first guest star or co-star experience, like being on a big set for a show for the first time? Just like what was that like? Sort of, I'm sure quite intimidating, almost feel like a fish out of
Right.
water. But yeah, what was that like?
And real quick, it's cool that you bring that up because one of our producers dropped this statistic that SWAT over the 8 seasons has employed like 1,800 different
Wow.
roles. So like 1,800 jobs for actors out there. So I thought that was pretty cool. And that's one of the beautiful things about network television is that it offers so many jobs for actors, and many of who are looking to get their start, which you're looking to get your feet wet to try to get that 2 line role or that first big guest star.
Yeah.
And so if I go back to my first co-star on network television was on Castle. And I had a couple lines, and I think I was playing like kind of a CIA agent, very
Mm.
fitting. But yeah, I do remember. Of course, you it's intimidating. You're working across from the star of the show, so you don't want to mess up, right? You just want to move the story
Yeah.
along, and not be a problem and be likable and do a great job. And but you do, I think, have to remember that you got that part, you won that part for a reason. You belong there, and so at the end of the day, everyone are artists and actors and collaborators, and we're all there to support one another and encourage each other to do their best performance. Because when a co-star or guest star gives a great performance, it only enhances the performance of the series leads, which overall makes the show just better. And so I always felt, whether it was 2 lines or a guest star, I always felt very supported when I would do these roles. And but of course, a big moment in your career, first co-star, first guest star. You can do it. It's kind of that thing, that mystery of something that you think is a bit out of reach, but you do it and you're like, oh, it's like business as usual, professional. Maybe I can do this. And I think it's that kind of mental block for a lot of actors, that once you get over that, booking that first thing, that first guest star, I think it can really propel your career, or just shift something mentally, that says I can do this.
And there was a specific episode of SWAT that I remember, where we meet Tan's, quote unquote uncle, not really his uncle, but he sort of mentions like, you could have gone to MIT and become an engineer and made your family proud that way. Instead, you became a cop. I'm curious if that was a coincidence, or did the writers know that about your background and they sort of weaved it into the story? And have there been other things that they've sort of taken from your life, things you've told them, and put it into the show?
Yeah, the thing with like network television is you spend so much time with these people and these writers. They really get to know you. They really start to write for you. They get to know your life. They can draw things from your life and parallels, which they've done. So certainly I can relate to something like that. Yeah, you should have been an engineer. You better become an engineer, not chase this dream of becoming an actor, or in this case, a police officer. But definitely, they've drawn things from our personal lives, of all the actors, and folded them into some of these storylines. And it's been kind of cool because over an 8-year journey, so much life happens. I got married. Over the course of the 8 years, people got married, divorced, had kids. All these things happened within our SWAT family. And also getting to play a character for 8 years is a really cool thing, because you get to go on this journey with, let's say, Victor Tan, and you get to grow with him and evolve with him. And he started as this kind of young officer trying to prove himself, and now 8 seasons later, he's like, one of the senior officers on the team. He's a leader. He's kind of a mentor to the newer officers. He's taken over a SWAT academy. So he's stepped up into a different role. So it's been really fun to just get to grow with this character over 8 seasons.
And seeing as the show has so many sort of veterans, and now, I mean, at this point, you've been acting for, as you said, 15 years or more. You're definitely an industry veteran. At this point, you have multiple shows under your belt, with long runs.
Doesn't
I'm
feel like
curious.
it. Flew by.
Yeah. I'm curious if any of your co-stars who are like sort of those industry veterans, have they either become mentors in the sense that like you are able to go to them for advice or guidance, or even if they're like a silent mentor, as I call it, where you can just like observe them and you see how they lead, how they carry themselves on
Right.
a set.
Definitely a bit of both. And what I've found, and again, when I joined SWAT, again, I was one of the least experienced of the main cast, even though for many of us it was our biggest role to date. But I would still lack the experience of, Patrick St. Esprit, who plays Hicks, who's been in the industry for 45 years, Shamar, who's coming up on 30 years, or he may have just passed it, in the industry, coming off of Criminal Minds that went 11. He was on for 11 seasons. So what I found is that guys like that, and in general, are willing to mentor and advise and pass along what they've learned in their careers. And someone like me was like eager to soak it all in. And of course, you always learn by watching, watching how Shamar leads this series for 8 seasons, and all the things that he has to deal with, outside of just showing up and knowing his lines, and doing that scene and hanging off the helicopter and doing the car chase, all the other things he has to deal with being number one on the call sheet. So you learn by watching, you learn by asking, and Patrick has been a huge mentor to me. I've learned so much from him, not just by working with him, but by talking to him, sitting with him at cast chairs, running lines, things like that. And that to me is invaluable. It's stuff that you can't learn in an acting class. It's stuff you can't learn by reading an acting book. It's just that experience of getting to be on a set and working with these industry veterans.
And before we wrap up, we're gonna go to a portion of the show we call From the Fans. We have a couple of fan submitted questions here. We'll start with the question actually from the official SWAT Writers Room account. They
Oh
wanted to
wow,
throw a question your way. So they said, looking back on 8 years of memories, what was your single favorite day on set?
that is a hard
Hard,
question to
8 years.
answer. I I can't think of a single favorite day, but I will say that I've loved every second of being part of SWAT. It has been the most amazing and incredible journey. The people I got to meet, the friendships, the memories, and just the experiences of taking our show to Tokyo, taking our show to Thailand. It went to Mexico at least 2 or 3 times. I didn't get to go either of those times, but taking your show international, the outpouring of love and support from fans worldwide, getting to be part of that, getting to play this character for 8 years and break down barriers and break stereotypes. Everything that I ever wanted to do when I got into this industry was right here, in this beautiful role that maybe was never really supposed to be. Since they created this role in the pilot for me to come in and do 6 episodes, and it turned into 163. So single favorite day on set, very hard. I'd have to really think
Yeah.
about that. But man, so many favorite days on set. Just overall, all the cool stuff that we got to do, the stunts, the explosions, and many of us getting to do our own stunts. That's stuff that actors dream of doing.
And one more question from I always warn about the usernames on Reddit because they're so funny sometimes. This one's A minor G string.
I love
They
it.
ask, how does it feel to be a positive representation of Asian masculinity on network TV? Too much of Asian male representation in media is centered around stereotypes, and it's refreshing to see someone like Tan be the complete opposite of that. Plenty of action, gets the girl, has also shown initiative and leadership skills.
Tremendous honor. Very grateful that I get to be a part of that. It's one of the things, was one of my goals when I got into this industry. Selfishly, I thought that I could maybe change the narrative around the way Asian males are portrayed in TV and film, and also just a testament to the work behind the camera. You can't just do it from in front of the camera. It's got to be Justin Lin, who directed our pilot, who may have nudged the rest of the producers to create this role. It's got to be our writers. We have a very diverse writers room who want to tell these Asian American stories and understand the stereotypes, and that we don't want to lean into those. We want to lean away from those. And then just I've having a lot of conversations with the writers about this and the way where we want to take the Tan character. So I just feel very grateful that I get to be mentioned in that type of conversation, and I hope to continue to do roles going forward that are positive role models and that can continue to break down barriers.
And before we go, we always end with a quick game. So pick a number between one, two, and three, and that'll decide what game we do.
I'm gonna pick 3 because I'm hoping we get uncanceled for a third time. That's a we'll pick 3. Let's pick 3.
Awesome. Okay, so game number three is called It's Time for Life's Big Questions. We start with if you could have any superpower, which would you choose?
For me, it's always been flying. I don't know why.
Mhm.
I think it'd be cool and probably a little dangerous. It probably wouldn't last long if I could fly.
What director are you dying to work with?
Wow. Um, Director, that is a good question. I would say Guy Ritchie.
Oh,
Uh,
good choice.
not Guy. Yeah, Guy Ritchie. Yeah. I always get Guy Pierce, Guy Ritchie. Guy Ritchie. I just love his stuff. It's so like just in your face, like action, and
Yeah.
I just love action. It's so entertaining, and I love the way he does action.
Mhm. What is the last movie you saw in theaters?
The last movie I saw in theaters. That's also a good question because we watch a lot of movies from my couch. I want to say Maverick with Tom
Oh,
Cruise.
Top Gun Maverick. Oh, yeah,
I want to say Top Gun Maverick.
yeah, yeah. Which is a good choice because that has to be watched on the big screen. That
Like
movie was
playing
incredible.
on the big screen, and then I
Yeah.
mean the next one I might watch is Mission Impossible. Also,
Oh, yeah.
the next Mission Impossible. Can you tell
After
I
a
like action? Yeah.
right. After a long week of filming, what do you do to unwind and recover?
Relax, hang with my wife and my dog, catch up, just and recover. Like the show is one of the most challenging things about the show is the physicality of it.
Mhm.
So after a week, oftentimes you feel like you got hit by a bus, and so you're just recovering and sleeping, catching up on everything, and then it's back to like studying and prepping for the next week because
Right.
once that network television train gets moving, it does not stop.
Yeah. What movie never fails to make you laugh?
Dumb and Dumber. That was like my favorite movie growing up. One of them.
And last question, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
Ooh, what advice would I give to a young actor? Um, Learn your craft. Um, Put in the work. What is that like six words already? That's
7.
tough. That's tough. Learn your craft. Put in the work, and dream big. Anything's possible.
Thanks for joining us. Actors with Issues is hosted and produced by Juan Ayala. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel or on the podcast platform you're listening to. Visit actorswithissues.com for exclusive news and reviews, and give us a follow on Instagram and TikTok at Actors with Issues.